when Jeff Sessions testifies tomorrow, do you believe that he should invoke executive privilege on conversations between himself and the president as it relates to Jim Comey?
I think it depends on the scope of the questions, and it would be to get into a hypothetical at this point would be premature.
And in any way, did Jeff Sessions, folks at the DOJ, ask for the White House's permission, in essence, for him to testify publicly tomorrow?
I don't know the answer to that question. I know Congress, generally speaking, sets the whether a hearing is open or closed based on the sensitivity of the subject.
Is the president then okay with him testifying in this open setting tomorrow?
I think he's going to testify. We're aware of it, and go from there. John.
Just to follow on that, the president.
So you can hear the folks questioning Sean Spicer on Jeff Sessions' testimony. I haven't seen a countdown yet, but I'm waiting for it, because last week they had a 24-hour countdown to letting. Had a 24-hour countdown, of course, to the James Comey testimony. And now, sort of on short notice, they're going to have a countdown probably to Jeff Sessions taking the stand tomorrow. And that's what all the questions have focused on. First, they brought out Alex Acosta at this press briefing today, the Secretary of Labor, and he talked a bit about this jobs effort, effort that they're trying to put on to get people into more prepared for the workforce, right? Maybe you go out of high school and you go into this as opposed to straight to college or to a 4-year college degree. So they talked about that first. Spicer comes out, and all they want to talk about is Jeff Sessions. Is he going to ask for some sort of cover so that he doesn't have to talk about specific conversations he held with the president regarding Jim Comey or anything of the like? So get more details on that. We'll bring them to you. But I suspect that Jeff Sessions is more than up to the task, or he probably would not have agreed to do this. The other big story that's kind of developing right now, one court, the Ninth Circuit Court, has upheld the injunction, the ban on the president's travel restrictions to 6 countries that happen to be majority Muslim. But there's another case today that is pending before the United States Supreme Court. We are expecting the possibility of a decision on this today by the Supreme Court. Doug McKelway, the Fox News Channel, is covering that story, and we appreciate him giving us some time today. Doug, how are you?
I'm doing great, Mark. How are you?
I'm doing well. What is the? Do you expect to hear by the end of the day on this from the Supreme Court?
Probably not by the end of the day. In all likelihood, we could hear something perhaps by the end of this week. It's possible we could hear something today, but I think the more likely scenario is we'll hear something by the end of this week. What's going on basically at the Supreme Court is the Department of Justice has petitioned the High Court to let the travel ban take effect in the interim while the larger constitutional questions are being argued in the High Court. So they're just asking for it to be put in place, the ban to be put in place. But at the same time, this separate case which you just talked about, the Ninth Circuit has now upheld the injunction against the revised travel ban that the Trump administration put out after the first one was rejected also by the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. And in their ruling, the Ninth Circuit Court today said that we conclude that the president, in issuing this executive order, exceeded the scope of the authority delegated to him by Congress. It goes on to say that in suspending the entry of more than 180 million nationals from 6 countries, the president did not meet the essential precondition to exercising his authority, that being that the president must make sufficient finding that the entry of these people would be detrimental to the interests of the United States. And the Ninth Circuit, as we all know, which is an extremely left-leaning court, its rulings have been overturned by the High Court more than any other appeals court. It found that the president did not make that case. The other interesting thing is many people have speculated, Mark, about the president's tweets potentially getting him in trouble or legal trouble.
Right.
That appears to be a concrete example of this, because they cited in this ruling today, the Ninth Circuit Court did, that the president recently confirmed his assessment that it is these countries that it confirmed his assessment that it is these countries that are inherently dangerous rather than the 180 million individual nationals of those countries who are barred from entry under the travel ban. And then it goes on to cite a tweet from Donald Trump. Here's the tweet. It says, "That's right, we need a travel ban for certain dangerous countries, not some politically correct term that won't help us protect our people." That's a tweet that he fired off on June 5th. This month. So the Ninth Circuit cited that tweet to bolster their particular case. So that's very interesting, and I think it's the first time that a tweet has been cited by an appeals court or legal body
they're
to
ruling,
substantiate their decision.
Yeah, their ruling, Doug, kind of focused more on the a violation of immigration law of some sort, though, as opposed really to his authority, whether or not he has the authority to limit travel, correct?
Right. Well, the administration and the Department of Justice in their petition to the High Court a couple of weeks ago, basically the bottom line was that they maintain that the Constitution confers broad authority on the president alone to set immigration policy when he deems it is in the national interest. So that's the broader question that is before the High Court. But here, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals said that he did not make the case. The Department of Justice did not make the case that it was in the nation's interest because he was citing these dangerous countries, not the 180 million individual nationals from these dangerous countries that are dangerous. Those 6 countries that the court is referring to there are Syria, Libya, Sudan, Yemen, Somalia, and Iran. Iraq was on the initial travel ban, but it was removed from the list in the revised ban after a lot of Americans made a case that Iraq has been tremendously cooperative with the United States in rooting out terrorism and cooperating in the war on terror. So Iraq was removed. A lot of Iraqis, obviously, who are in danger in that country from terrorism are seeking to immigrate to the United States.
Sure. You've covered the Supreme Court for a long time. Do they, when they get this close to the end of a term, can these decisions come out just any time, or are they released in bunches at particular days of the week?
It tends to be in bunches on particular days of the week,
so.
But the most I can narrow this particular decision down to would be probably before the end of the week, as I said. But that's as specific as we've heard anything at this point.
Very interesting. Doug McKelway, thanks for that insight. I appreciate it as always.
My pleasure.
Have a great day. Doug McKelway from the Fox News Channel, and you can watch his coverage of this story a little later in the day when it comes down. We don't know when this might happen. But they do just sort of release these. They've got several cases actually have been released today. And if it comes down, you'll hear about it first here if while we're on the air. The White House press briefing continues. Let me get back to Michael's phone call here. He's been holding since the last block. Michael, you're on the radio.
Well, thank you for taking my call.
Yes, sir.
My question, when Jim Comey was testifying to one of the questioners, when they asked him, is this how it happened? It was a question on what President Trump supposedly said, and Mr. Comey said, I wrote everything down exactly how this happened. I don't forget a thing. And then two people later, when he was being questioned, and they said, is this how it happened? He says, if I wrote it down correctly, then yes, that's what happened.